Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 416, right? Is that right? My math on that one?
You were about to
416.
You're about to say 3:16 because John 3:16 is probably your favorite Bible verse.
Well, it's actually Austin 3:16 if Ronald knows where I was.
Said I just whipped your ass.
That was so delayed and it was perfect because I was setting you up. To come in on that was a tag team effort, and your whole feed just froze. But it was on a big smile, like you sensed where I was going. But then I was like, "What's happening?"
It's weird.
It was weird. It just the Zoom wasn't prepared for Austin 3:16.
When I said that favorite Bible verse, I also said favorite. I don't know if you heard that.
Favorite.
So I was
this podcast is starting off perfectly.
I was going to ask Ronald, what does favorite mean instead of favorite? And then I turned to Ronald and he was frozen up. So it's just like the wheels fell off the Schmovie.
What I said out loud and what you were thinking, he definitely received, and it just completely broke his computer.
It's like. Whoop.
So what mic are you going through right now, Steve? I just want to make sure because you've started to get that sharper sound. Are you
right now? I'm just going through this mic. It's probably because I'm moving closer to it.
Okay, all right. No, you sound good.
I'll move it away. Bye-bye.
Yeah, don't be too far away. We'd like to hear those pipes.
So, yeah.
Should we start over?
No, if you want to, we can. Yeah, sure.
or should we leave it in?
Yeah, no. We can start over. That's fine. What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 416. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. And as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
No big lead in, John. You don't have like a big read from Ronald's pick or from the Acolyte or from anything else you've seen this last week. You've got me baited every week to like, what is he going to say? What he's going to say?
I want it to be more of a fun surprise when it happens, and less something that I obsess over going into the episode.
So you're throwing me off, is what you're saying.
I didn't know I was throwing you off, but I hoped I was throwing everyone in America who listens off.
Well, I started the fan club of what is John going to say at the open, and now I got to go back to the membership and say nothing this week.
Well, you know what? I think what threw me off a little bit was when you have a movie that is in a different language and you're reading subtitles, like the way you want to say the line, the spin you want to put on it, it's a little bit harder to discern. And then I think Acolyte, I just didn't have my quotable lines antenna up when I was watching Acolyte for some reason. So
yeah.
I guess I just want to let everybody know I failed you this week.
Oh, dang.
You do you, John. You didn't fail anybody. When you're ready, you let it rip, buddy. We're here to listen, and we're waiting. That's all I'm saying. That's great. Welcome to a new episode. We're going to kind of get back into the groove this week after last week's first volume of our new Watch 'Em All series on the Halloween film series. We're going to do Ronald's pick for required viewing in a bit here. And then we're going to talk a little bit briefly about the first two episodes of the new Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte. And then I think we're going to just go into a classic What Else Did You Watch in the Last 7 Days episode of Movie Schmovie. So that's to come. Ronald, you want to remind us what your required viewing pick was and kind of set us up?
Yeah, the Jang Jae-hyun 2024 horror film Exhuma. That was my pick. Now, this is interesting because it was released in the wild, and then I think Shudder's taking it and releasing it at some point very soon. So that version seems to be dubbed, but I think the version that's in the wild on like other services seems to just be subtitles. Now that's interesting because that could really change your entire watching experience. But the movie is essentially about, let me read the tagline. The process of excavating an ominous grave unleashes long hidden secrets and dreadful consequences buried underneath. So it follows, I'd say mediums. If one
like a shaman.
Shamans. Well, it's a combination because some of them are shamans and some of them are like mediums.
It's a two shaman, a geomancer,
who's kind of like a master of feng shui, sort of,
right?
Yeah,
and a mortician.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And
it sounds like it's set up to a joke, but it's
right.
It's anything but.
Two shaman, a feng shui master, and a mortician walk into the forest, or go dig up a grave, which is what they do. I was really drawn to that sort of like, I think this often happens when you're watching a film made in a different country, where you're just seeing like a genre that you've seen a bunch of, or that you've seen the formula, and here's like a sturdy, reliable setup for a story that's just gotten a different formula applied to it because it's slightly different. I mean, I wrote down in my notes, there might be a better phrase for this, but like cultural baggage. When you live in a country, you understand all the cultural baggage that the creators are bringing to it. I felt like this movie had a lot of interesting cultural baggage that I was only barely understanding. That I really want to know. I mean, like, I'll say this, Ronald. I watched this movie once shortly before this conversation, and I wish I'd had so much more time to dig into just what it is and what the basis for it is, and what category of film it fits into. I was wondering if you had more of a sense of that, of like, is there like a subgenre of like Korean horror that feels like this? Because I've seen Korean horror before, but I don't know that I've seen it quite done like this.
I didn't. I've seen ones that involved like spiritual elements, but something about this felt like it was trying to be like a serious Ghostbusters. Like, it was like something about this felt a little different in that way. So I know what you mean, but no,
it made me think of The Conjuring, just because of the sort of structure of it, and that what you were kind of just alluding to, the sort of like, and which I think on this show we're always fans of, even if we don't always love the movies. We always like it when somebody approaches a horror or any kind of genre thing, but particularly horror, with like a an epic movie idea, or just like a large scale. It doesn't have to be big. I want to say big budget, but I really just mean like it feels big budget. It feels like a posh storyline that's like being well developed. It's not a quickie cash in kind of horror approach, and it's not a low budget indie approach. It's like a polished adult film that uses these themes. And so you're not familiar with much surrounding this movie either. Okay, I wondered about that. So how you just saw the name somewhere, or just saw people talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, you get to watching, like, top horror films of 2024 so far, and it was on a couple of people's lists. And sometimes I wonder, man, like, is this a little quick to judge? It was like it was on an article 4 months in. The one thing I will say about this movie is I don't know the fucking rules. There was a point the last half an hour of the movie where I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what, and it wasn't because there was no like, because I wasn't reading. I read every line. They just didn't lead in with like, we're going to put up 5 pigs before they put up 5 pigs to kind of stop this. You know what I mean? It was just like,
well, they said there's a ritual called this, and then we witnessed the ritual.
Yeah.
And we witnessed like at length. And I have to say, that scene, I mean, if you're looking for sort of a showpiece scene at the center of a movie, that scene, it really is sort of drawn out, but like you really feel like you're witnessing, and even the way it's filmed, you feel like you're witnessing something uncanny. And I thought that was something. I mean, I really was kind of beguiled by this aspect of this movie, the fact that when the uncanny things were happening, we very infrequently are seeing something uncanny on screen. Like we maybe see the ghost. I mean, there's time later in the film, there's a monster samurai ghost that shows up, that is unquestionably a monster samurai ghost, but grandfather. But earlier in the movie, you see a character sort of reacting to like their sensory environment, but we don't necessarily see what they're experiencing so much as we really feel that sense of like what something's happening. And I think that's like that thing that you feel in your own home sometimes, where you are experiencing that little like heightened senses, and like your hair standing up. And so I kind of feel like this movie did a great job of that, like in that scene, that ritual scene. I kind of got goosebumps from it, but nothing you really see on screen is anything particularly supernatural or crazy until the aftermath of it. It's like, it's very, I mean, we talk about atmosphere in horror films, and I probably talk about it most of all because it's what I look for, but I feel like this movie actually created atmosphere. It almost seemed like the scares were atmospheric scares, and which I just think that takes real skill and pacing, and also really nice photography, I think, to pull off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is an example where, like, it could feel it's a good sample of a film that kind of breaks apart the divisiveness of like what horror films can be. Like, where the first half of this movie is very kind of, it's slower, it's more calculated, it's more about this atmosphere that John's describing, and the second half is much more dialed up, and it kind of goes it goes crazy, a bit towards the end. But through the whole thing, you kind of have like the mystery of it until you kind of get into what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I feel like a lot of times the slow doesn't work as well for me. And I'm not saying I'm not about slow and atmospheric, because
I know what you mean.
some of that works really well in certain films, and like I'm huge fans of those movies. But I feel like in this example, this is a good example of, like, I felt like I almost definitely enjoyed the first half of the movie more than the second half of the movie. Like the slower, more character, more like the ritual stuff, and like a lot of the cultural stuff that's coming into the firstborn of each generation, and what's kind of feeding this, this curse or whatever they labeled it as. Like, that was really working on me. And I mean, as a whole, I thought the movie was still very enjoyable. Like, I really liked it and found it really interesting. But like some of the stuff that goes towards the end, and maybe that's more towards like these kinds of films that come out in that country. Because also, to mention real quick, like, reading about this a little bit just before we record it, this is the #1 movie of the year in Korea. It's made like 80 some million dollars there. Like, and it's not even really, like, the next movie is like 10 or more million under that.
Right.
So this is like a huge,
I saw that.
A huge hit, in terms of, and I think it's even added more internationally. It's almost at like $100 million worldwide. So that this is like a massively successful movie that has, found an audience. But yeah, so it's coming, the way you get it here now, like it's gonna, I think it is gonna go to Shudder, like you said, at some point. But like right now, it's streaming just like digitally on any platform, you normally would get PVOD on. But yeah, I don't know. I found it really interesting. I felt like, what's the actor's name who played the Geomancer? I'm from Old Boy. I think he's just incredible.
Choi Min Sik is
yeah.
I don't know how to say it.
So good. He's
but
so
yeah,
good.
Kim Sang-deok, the Feng Shui master or the Geomancer. He's really the heart of the film.
Yeah,
and in fact, I thought that it was really effective and honestly very sweet the way the movie ended with him at a family event, and like his family, he's there with his family, and I mean, really, it's that kind of, you've been to hell and back, and now you don't really feel at home around your family anymore. And then but the rest of his like supernatural investigator, his Ghostbuster team is like over there, and they're like even like in the shadow, and they don't really want to be part of it, but he motions them over. And I thought it was like, you could have a great ending where he motions them over and they say, no, we stay where we are. But the fact that they actually come over, and then they make a point of how like the photographer integrates them into the crowd in a particular way before we get that final shot. I just thought that was like, you were talking about great character stuff, Steve. This is really good filmmaking and really good acting, and the characters are interesting. Like from the first scene, I was interested. And again, what could be very formulaic. You said, Ronald, you didn't realize this movie was over 2 hours. I had that feeling sitting down to watch it going, okay, supernatural thriller over 2 hours. Maybe it's really good. Korean films are sometimes incredible, from every technical aspect. So maybe I'm in for just a really good ride. But I was worried that the genre stuff, if maybe, I don't know, I didn't know quite what to expect. But no, it just felt like such a good movie. And it was, but I mean, it had the feel and the look. There's like that scene where they're having a meeting. That might even be before they decide to take the job for sure. But they're having that meeting in like a high rise, and the Geomancer goes and kind of looks out the window, and you see like the lights reflected on the window. That was like fucking Ridley Scott level slick looking to me. And, like finding a really beautiful opulent surrounding to stick these characters in, just to have an interesting conversation. So yeah, it was just really fun to look at.
The Ghostbusters thing I was talking about is like tonally, the first half of the first like quarter of the movie was light. It was like the
lighter. It was heavy because of the characters, but I know what you mean. The tone was a little bit like, what I mean, like the scientists are trying to figure out what to do, and it was a little bit,
literally kicking the adults out so they could deal with the baby was shot for laughs, like that was shot. So like that part was kind of tonally, it's like eating chips while talking about the supernatural stuff. Like that stuff was real light, and then it got really heavy, really quick.
Yeah.
So that was a little jarring to me. Like I think that's the part that I can't get out of my head was just how much you're right. It wasn't like super light, but how much lighter the first
right.
quarter was versus how it was like. And what was up with this spiritual villain? Just like he was just giving people like gunshot wounds in the leg. He wasn't like chopping off heads. He's just like, all right.
Well, he didn't. His body count was crazy, but it wasn't too crazy. Like he did crazy stuff to people. Like
he's like, let me mortally
he rips a few
wound
heads
you.
off, right? But then other people he kind of ambiguously like that felt like more of a supernatural wound. What happened to Bong Jil, the kind of junior shaman,
the apprentice
that worked under Quarim, the main character.
He's like, take his liver.
I know, well, but I mean, then he's in a hospital bed, and he's like a connection to that guy. But no, I mean, I guess we're kind of all over the place, but it's because this movie is. You said you don't know the rules, and Steve, you were talking about how the first half, like, there's a definite change. It does just get crazier and crazier, and a couple of those scenes I just loved, like that scene where they're out in the courtyard and they're looking up, and it's like a flaming. The ghost is this flaming thing above, and you see like these wide shots of the ghost up above them in the sky, and before it goes away, that's just like. I've never seen that before, and I was watching it going, well, that looks like real fire. If that's like CGI, it's really well done. And I thought it was an example of that kind of judicious use of effects. You know, another movie that it's not like, but that I felt the sort of same exhilaration from, Where Evil Lurks, or When Evil Lurks.
When Evil Lurks, yeah.
Oh, When Evil Lurks.
That had a similar feel of like, okay, I feel like there's a cultural commentary that I'm not quite getting from the U.S. standpoint, but the filmmaking is so good. And that's not a knock. I'm saying I feel like there are layers to this movie that I would appreciate much more if I understood just I can do a little research and understand the implications of this political commentary or whatever. But if I was watching this movie from inside the culture, I would be much more like latching on, knowing what all those associations mean. But in both those cases, I feel like those films were where I was just along for the ride, and I was like, oh, this is possession, but it's not the cliched version I've seen before, and it's not somebody imitating one of those classic films that's about possession. It's a different angle, and this film has like ghost, a little bit of possession. There's a lot of like arcane magic that I don't know if this is based on actual like superstition and cultural folkloric magic in Korea, or if this is something they invented for the movie, but it almost doesn't matter because it does come across, like you said, Ronald, there's like, it's not Ghostbusters exactly, but it is a little bit of that having fun with these tropes and having fun throwing, I mean, fun is a strange word, just like light is a strange word to apply to this movie, but because of the concern you have for the characters, and because of the fact that the movie isn't set up to just pick all the characters off one by one, like our core team is intact at the end. They all go through some stuff, but they're intact. You can't say the same thing about some of those side characters.
They got
don't
demolished.
Ever help the core team in a movie like this, but being on the core team, you're in a good spot. But no, I liked the rulelessness of it. I like not knowing like what's gonna work to stop this. It reminds me sometimes of Drag Me to Hell, the way at the last parts of that movie, you're just going, well, I don't know that anything's going to stop this. You know, I don't really know that anybody knows quite what they're up against. But I also liked the family bloodline part of this. I thought that was an interesting angle of like what the scope of this ghost's fury was going to be directed at his own descendants. Is really chilling. And again, there's something in there about people who worked with Japan when Japan was occupying Korea. People who carried some of that Japanese culture forward. There's something in there that is I'm getting some of, but I really want to understand more. But the character stuff was really good.
There were some visuals that I just had never seen in my life, like the stuff with the grave, everything with the grave,
the screaming snake.
Would they have like the face of a person?
Had like a weird little lumpy person face on it.
Yeah, like a lumpy
we didn't ever get a good look at it, but just enough to know that it was wrong. You shouldn't have seen it. No snake should scream like that.
And he shouldn't have maybe cut the head off or whatever he did with it.
Oh, that poor guy. You know what was chilling when that guy was talking was the camera work was then moving over the forest, like while we were hearing him talk about stuff. And he was saying, I mean, what was a grave doing there? I thought that was such a creepy line. Lines like that just really get to me. It's like the whole thing of like this, everybody admits this is this odd place to bury somebody. I don't know,
vertical grave. Oh my god!
The coffin buried under the coffin, and this one is standing upright. That was super creepy. Yeah,
love it.
What is this? Yeah, with barbed wire around it. They were like, this person's never coming out of this.
And that they're like, they don't know quite what this means. To your point about the rules, Ronald, like they're even like, what does this mean again when it's buried upright and it's got barbed wire around it, and but also even before that, the little rule, I felt like we were getting a procedural about doing this kind of magic that they do, like when they're talking about we've got to cremate this thing, but we can't do it on a rainy day. That's bad for the spirit. I just stuff like that. I loved it. I mean, and again, I'm sure some of that is based on real custom, and some of that might be folklore and superstition that they've spun into this. But it really almost feels like a movie that could have an excellent sequel too. I'm not saying they should cheapen it by doing that, but the fact that the team is intact and they could get another mission in part 2, like you could totally have Exhuma
2.
Exhuma Tuma.
Digging your guts too. You're digging your guts. But there was a lot of that. There was just a lot of like
the shot inside the body, and then on the outside, it almost looked like there was no external wound. Maybe I'm crazy, but it almost looked like that was a totally supernatural wound.
Yeah.
That poor guy.
You know what it reminded me of? You know those like snake salesman preachers that would say they pull cancer out of you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can pull cancer out of you, and it just be like this mass that comes out with no wound.
And they've got like some uncooked chicken that they have slipped into their hand, right? And they pull it out. Look at this.
Yes, your liver. Yeah, anyway, but overall, it sounds like we found things about it that we enjoyed for sure, which is all that matters.
Definitely. Yeah.
No, I really did. Another character we haven't really talked about who I thought was really a fun character, who I actually thought was like, well, that guy's going to die. The mortician guy, the guy with glasses. He was a great character, but he felt like he definitely felt like he was set up to die in the part where don't open this coffin, whatever you do, And then it turned out to be that one greedy guy who like just showed up to act weird and slimy and then try to pry open the coffin and then leave. But it's not. Correct me if I'm wrong. That guy doesn't get killed or anything. We don't see anything.
No, I don't think anything happens to that guy.
That's the way this movie kind of breaks the formula. In an American movie, you would bring that character in to be the first death. He would be the one who pries it open, and he would be the person who gets killed. But yeah, I liked the kind of geeky mortician who was also like, it seemed like he had church classes going on or something. There was a lot of like life around this. You could sort of believe these are the types of people that would be involved in this kind of supernatural research because they already have these, different views. I don't know. I was very kind of smitten with it overall. And I think as a viewing experience, I kind of agree with what Steve said, that like in the first half, I was really engaged. And then when it hit that point where it gets crazier and crazier, I was still really into it. But I did feel myself going like, now I'm kind of, I didn't feel tethered in terms of like, where's this going exactly? But I don't think I really mind that. Once it got to the end, I thought they really brought it home nicely, and keeping focused on the characters for a couple extra minutes when it's done right is almost always a good move.
Yeah. Also, squeezing heads kills people, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, you're dead.
You don't want to, whatever that was. I mean, I guess I'm looking up what they call it. They call it a ghoul in this stuff. And he was definitely ghoulish, but I swear that was a 7 or 8 foot tall samurai man.
Yeah.
With like a weird hollow face. Good. I mean, good monster. If we're going to give people credit when they come up with something new, that was a good monster.
I would watch a movie with that guy just going around killing people.
Like a slasher approach with that.
Oh, that'd be so good.
Turn of the Ghoul.
You say ghoul, and I'm thinking of Fallout.
Right. Well, no, ghouls are all over the place, but I do think a few people have tried to turn it into like a proprietary thing like that. So right now, Fallout is the thing you think of. So no, good pick, Ronald. I'm glad.
Oh, thanks, man. Steve, isn't it your turn?
It is your turn, young Steve.
I think it's me, man.
Me Man.
It's Me Man. That's the pick. It's the movie called
the most narcissistic superhero.
Me Man.
Me Man.
So, I was thinking about it when we were doing the first episode of the Halloween Watch 'Em All, and like just thinking about kind of like babysitters and camp, and I'm looking for a horror film to kind of stay in that lane right now, keep this trend going. And there was a movie that I had in my mind, and I had it on my watch list. I had to track it down the other day. That I forget who I followed on Twitter, who kept talking about this movie. Maybe a year. I think it was in 2023 when I first kind of added it to my list. But one of the follows that one of the critics I really like kept talking and banging the drum for, like, on his list of like horror movies that are like smaller or indies or whatever that you never heard of. And the one that kept coming up is a 2022 movie called Here for Blood. And it seemed to kind of be in this idea talking about the campiness of some of these slashers, horror films, babysitter, somebody at a house kind of scenario. But it had really great reviews, and community seemed to really kind of embrace it and talk about it. It's a smaller movie, but the plot, the little log line for it is when his girlfriend, well, let me get the right one. When his girlfriend is swamped with college exams, a pro wrestler agrees to cover her well-paying babysitting job. What started off as an easy night quickly spirals into bloody chaos when a murderous cult comes to abduct the child.
Oh, wow.
And somebody was like, a bunch of things like, this is the best horror comedy wrestling movie ever. And I was like, I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah.
And what's it called one more time?
It's called Here for Blood. And it's available. It's available, through the regular rental platforms, VOD. But I was looking it up, and it's also on Hoopla. I've never used Hoopla, but it's streaming on that, as well as Screenbox. It's there as well.
Okay.
If you have subscriptions to either of those. Otherwise, it's basically like $2.99 or $3.99 to rent on basically every digital platform. But again, it's 2022 film called Here for Blood.
Here for Blood.
Okay. And we'll be talking about that the week after next. The week after.
Yeah, we'll be talking next week. We'll have an episode.
You're here next week, not the week after.
Following week, I'm traveling. So yes.
You go bye-bye.
Yes, I go bye-bye. I go bye-bye.
All right, cool. We'll see how that goes next week. We'll talk about that. The Acolyte. Did you want to talk about that briefly, John?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
You haven't checked it out, right? Yeah, you're right.
Not yet, but I want to.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, have you watched both episodes?
I have.
And what are your gut reactions? Initial thoughts.
I'm interested. I feel like I have this, like, I don't have this mentality anymore of like wow me Star Wars. I feel like I've definitely kind of like I definitely have a feeling of like I'm not gonna have expectations. I'm gonna let it impress me when the right thing comes along, kind of thing. Like I feel like there's a bit of an ebb right now with a lot of the Star Wars content, or at least what I have kind of felt with a lot of, specifically the Disney Plus series that we've had, since we haven't had a Star Wars film in years. But I mean, I think the reliance on these series, it's kind of been a very hit or miss, more miss for me with a lot of them, with the exception really of Andor, Mandalorian. Those two shows really are the ones that have stood out to me as really enjoying. But what I do like about this, and even like I was like reading more, trying to keep perspective on like what the Skeleton Crew or whatever that next one that's coming out, like the approach to what these series are, and specifically this one, like the kind of like a mystery, a mystery approach to a detective, looking into something. I don't know his name, but the guy from I can't remember his name, the guy from Squid Game that plays the lead. Like I like that idea.
Master Saul.
Yes. So if there's an angle, like what's the angle for the series? What's the new thing for the series? If that's what we're gonna have for the time being on Disney Plus, it's like that's what's got to hook me now, I feel like. And I mean, I definitely feel like I'm interested in the mystery of this show. Again, like taking place 100 years before I guess before what episode?
Before Phantom Menace. It's like, so this is the earliest we've been
in
a show or a movie.
Before the Empire, right.
Yeah, in live action. So.
I just I don't know, like it didn't nothing really like knocked me out. I do like the cast a lot. I like just kind of how diverse the cast is, and I love seeing different looks and different talent on the screen, and just like I don't know, like younger, new, exciting. I love Amanda Stellberg. Like I've seen her, everything I've seen her and I love her in, and she's basically the lead of this series. So I'm excited to see more of her. Um, but I don't know. I don't want to say I'm like very meh on it, but I'm very like in the middle. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like nothing's quite there yet, and maybe this is a series that really kind of kicks in on the third episode. But I don't know. I guess I'm not really saying a whole lot. I don't want to say too much because Ronald hasn't watched it, but I I feel like there's some interesting characters. I love the young blood. I love a younger cast, kind of being anchored by an actress that I really like. And seeing like Carrie Ann Moss pop up is nice. And again, the thing that's really interesting me in this series, even beyond it being Star Wars, is just like if it's like a cool mystery. I think if that's really what they can wrap around a Jedi story, that could work. That could be a successful thing. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a lot of people have watched the first episode, like the numbers that they released for like I think it's like the most watched series of the year so far on Disney.
Oh wow.
Which is good for Star Wars. They need something like that. Now, what it looks like after, I think they were trying to compare it to Ahsoka or Soka. Uh, it's its first 5 days. The number, like it could actually overperform that, which would be great if it
Mm-hmm.
did for them. But I don't know. Like I feel like without really like a actual central character, the it's I feel like I'm rambling. The risk of doing something that is not like referring to a character everybody knows is a risky thing to do, which I think Star Wars needs to do.
Right.
But then you say it's taking place the farthest back that we've really gone, but there's still Jedi, there's still Force, there's
Mm-hmm.
still these things that are like the concepts that we still maybe are enough to keep a lot of people that really, maybe the people that want those characters to be present or those names to be present, you would still be interested in this because there are still those like those buzzwords, those types of characters, or the whole Jedi presence is exciting. You see a lightsaber come out, it's still cool to see, no
Yeah.
matter how many times I've seen it. And the different types of lightsabers that this series is going to be talking or showing is exciting to hear about and to see. But it's like really at a point for me, it's like the story has to work, and the mystery piece of this is really what has me interested to watch more. Not much else except for it, and probably, like I said, I really like the lead actress in the series. What did you feel, John? I mean, like, were you excited for this? Did you have expectations for this?
I mean,
This
I
series?
I would say, as far as a Star Wars thing that when they announced it, I was excited for. This is definitely one that I was like, oh, they should definitely make that. They should definitely make, when they said, oh, it's going to be set further in the past, and it's going to be like the origin of this version of the Sith, or it's going to have something to do with seeing
Right.
the Sith side of things, and the name the Acolyte, and they even said it was going to be like a murder mystery,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So I was like, yes, definitely Star Wars needs to do that. New characters, new era. Gimme. Like that's what they need to do. And even if it's not up my alley personally, like even if it wasn't something I wanted, I would think they need to be doing that. They need to be breaking away. I think people overstate the need to break away from the core mythology and the Skywalker story and stuff. But I think that's kind of the narrative we're in right now, is like
Yeah.
that if they start to mention something too familiar, people are going to go, "Oh, it's that again." So I think it's wise to step away. But I think you need the Jedi, and
Yeah.
I think I don't mean I think you need it to be focused on Jedi characters. I mean I think you need that kind of like, if you go back that far, the Jedi were around. It is interesting to see a different era of them. I'm kind of tired of the uh oh, the Jedi were actually pieces of shit who were wrong about everything narrative that's like part of Star Wars now. I don't mean like I can't handle it. I just mean I think they've hit that note so much
Yeah.
in all the recent projects. Whereas before it was like, oh, the Jedi, they were good, right? No, there's actually, they weren't so great. They made a few decisions that weren't great. Now I feel like it's more like the Jedi just made every decision wrong and every now and then did something right. And
Right.
a new era might give us a chance to see a little bit more of a spectrum of like new characters that are dealing with that, rather than like trying to make sense out of Yoda's arc over the material that we have, or trying to make sense out of Obi-Wan's character or Anakin's character, given what we've seen, So
yeah,
I think that's great. I think that's the real strength of it. I'm not as high on the performance of Amandla Stenberg.
okay,
I love her, and I was happy she's in this. I don't know that she's doing enough to be the center of this thing, but I don't think she's bad. She's just kind of doing something that feels to me like TV level. And I think in a way, this is a compliment to the show, that it feels like it's hitting a TV level kind of pace. The scenes, the story's not so huge yet. And maybe I'm saying that as, like you were saying, what do they need to do? Maybe it's a smart thing for these shows to feel a little bit like they can break away from having to be like, oh, this is like Star Wars, but on your television. But it's like, no, these shows have never been quite as good in terms of those production values as the movies, So like, let's figure out how to make that work. And I think this show feels a little bit more like a show. Like there's some ways in which, and I remember Andor was one we said this about too, where it's like, this just feels more like somebody's trying to make a good show in the modern era. I don't think The Acolyte is anywhere near as well written and shot and acted as Andor, but it does have something, as you said. And I think that opening scene was a really cool way to open it. A lot of mystery, a lot of interest there. And I would even say, you talk about the lightsaber thing, Ronald, I think there's an interesting thing. I don't know they're going to stick to this, but in the first 2 episodes, it felt to me like they were trying to show us different kinds of...
to feel like you could act.
Sorry.
What happened? my hands go up and stick to
a notification went off.
But I feel like they're going out of their way to show us different ways of Jedis fighting or Jedis using the Force. Like there's knives in this. There's a Jedi who
knives out.
There's knives out and in. They're in as well, Ronald. And I'm going to set you up for something there. But there's also like a guy who uses the Force. He's seemingly meditating and he just has a force field around him, and that becomes like a way that he fights with somebody. It's just not being able to be attacked. Like there's different ways. And so when a lightsaber comes out, I feel like in the first 2 episodes, when a lightsaber came out, I felt a little bit more significance of, oh shit, the lightsaber came out. Not like prequel era, oh, there's 17 people doing flips with lightsabers, in a fight. So I feel like all those things are working for me. I think when you started off, Steve, saying I'm interested, that would be, if I had to give the show a 1-word review, that would be it. I'm interested, which in a way is a compliment to a Star Wars Disney Plus show. It doesn't feel like something where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to watch it. Because we've said that before. We've been 2 episodes into one of these and gone, yeah, I'm going to watch it. I don't feel that way about this. I feel like, no, I'm interested to see what this is. The actual mystery, when you see these 2 episodes, Ronald, you'll see the mystery isn't quite the mystery that you might think it is. But the mystery is still... It's that great Star Wars question that you can sometimes have of like, but who's pulling the strings behind this? Who's really like, whose plan is this? And I think the fact that these are all new characters makes it both worthwhile to find out, but also what Steve said, there's a little bit less weight because these are brand new characters, and because the writing isn't like A+ and the acting and everything, it's not all so fantastic that it's just popping. You're not sure. I don't know. 3 or 4 episodes in, I have a feeling I have a much firmer concept of like what the actual story of this show is going to be, because just the sort of mystery and just the kind of making it a little bit darker. It's not like a hard version of Star Wars you haven't seen before, but it's a little bit darker, and it's focusing a little bit on these maybe kind of creepier characters. So I think there's room for this to feel like it, like you said, Steve, like it's a worthy addition to what they can do. And yes, on top of that, if you want to give people points for updating the look of a Star Wars show, the cast on the show is a really great, like diverse, maybe is an overused word, but it's the right word for this cast. It's really interesting, and it feels like they went out of their way. It feels like the way that Jordan Peele goes out of his way not to put the same faces you've seen in the center of his movies. This almost felt a little bit more like that. Like the main faces you're seeing are not brand new for Star Wars, but it's a cast full of that. And I think that is, I don't know, it's something that
dig that for sure.
Makes it feel more like someone in 2024 is trying to make an interesting and engaging show, and they're not leaning so hard on this is only interesting because it's Star Wars, sort of the feel that you can sometimes get.
I think this is a cool time in Star Wars. I know that people talk about like it being like a rough time, but I kind of was looking forward to just stories. Like that's what I've been waiting for.
Right. When they brought it back, that's what they kind of said they might do. And they're finally kind of getting to that point where they're just
they're just telling stories.
Like maybe they're letting a person who has an idea for a story be the showrunner. You know, I don't quite know how the show got originated, but it does feel like the what's her name?
Leslie Headland.
That is you know, like a main creative force behind this. And I think that is you know, that feels good on any of these projects, to feel like there's a person behind the scenes actually running the show, that it's not one of these committee things. That I think they said they kind of changed that. You know, I know they did on the Marvel side. I think all the Disney Plus shows, they approach a little bit more like a traditional show now, with like a showrunner and a writer's room, and not like these kind of producer driven things that never go through that development process. You know, this feels developed. This feels like the first 2 episodes of a show, not like that kind of weird lumpy storytelling you sometimes get in these Disney Plus things, where you go like, are these the same people that were making the movies? Because they don't seem to know how to string a story together sometimes.
Yeah, I like a lot of what she's done. So like, it's interesting. Again, this is another one of those interesting choices for a Star Wars film or series. You know, and most of her, I love a lot of her. Like I was looking up earlier, like Bachelorette, Sleeping with Other People, and Russian Doll. Like I love all those things.
Yeah,
like they're great movies and a great series. And she also wrote the About Last Night remake, which I thought was way better than I expected it to be. Like, so she's like got a like interesting filmography to be making a Star Wars series. But she's obviously, watching her like talk about it in interviews over the last week, like with the casting, she's like perfect for it though. Like she's way dialed in to Star Wars, and like it's just the passion is there, and I think hopefully the show plans out to be pretty entertaining and pretty fun. But yeah, I'm interested and excited to watch more of it for sure.
And Ronald, after you've caught up, maybe once a few more episodes have come out, we'll do a more spoily segment on it, so that we can actually talk about some of these characters. Because there's things I'd like to say to you now that I'm just like, nah, I did not know what the basic setup of this story was going to be at all before watching the first episode. I only knew the broadest strokes. I don't know what you knew, Steve, but like the trailers don't tell you that much. You figure out a lot just in the first episode, as far as like what the kind of scope of the thing is going to be. So it's good to be as unspoiled as you can for that stuff, I think.
Cool.
What else did folks watch?
Ron, why don't you tell us what you watched?
I watched Bad Boys Ride or Die.
Oh, yeah.
Went to an advanced screening of that. Thank you, Redacted, for the access.
What is that? Is it Sony? What studio is Bad Boys? Thank you, Sony.
Yeah. So, this is supposed to be the last of the Bad Boys movies. This the quadrilogy, right? Is that
no way? No way.
So I saw a lot of people saying they made the mistake of calling the third one Bad Boys for Life, when they could have called this one Bad Boys
called it.
Obviously.
Yeah, Bad Boys Ride or Die is also the alternate name for the PlayStation, Xbox Bad Boys video game that came out in 2007.
Yeah.
It's Bad Boys Miami Takedown, but also Bad Boys Ride or Die. So random that it had 2 names. But this is supposed to be the culmination of all the films. And I'm going to say something, man. This is the Avengers Endgame of the Bad Boys movies. And I say that for a very specific reason.
There's a lot. 60 characters in it?
There's 60 characters in it. No, for real. There's 60 characters in it. And a lot of callbacks to all the films.
It's 3.5 hours long.
One of the that be so
Except
funny.
Instead of a snap, it's a slap that happened in between films.
I like that. I like that a lot. So that's another thing.
And he is slapped in the movie I was reading today, right?
Yeah, he is. And we're coming fresh.
Is it Chris Rock?
That would be amazing. We're coming fresh off of this. Like, this is the first movie back since the slap. Like, how do we feel about?
No, he had Emancipation. He had was it Emancipation?
That doesn't. I got to tell you, that doesn't count for us. We ignore all slave movies. I don't know if you know that. It's like like a big thing. Yeah. Okay. So this is the first like.
Didn't you have 12 Years a Slave on your top list that year? The year came out.
Yeah, but
that was an exception.
I remember, honestly, Ronald. I remember us starting that on the show anyway.
Yeah.
Starting that conversation with that movie.
Yeah.
Of like, almost like does it need to be this narrative every time?
Yeah.
And I think that movie deals with that question in a weird way by having him be someone.
Yeah.
Like the question I remember people had was, is this the right story to tell when this guy is not like a typical slave narrative? But I remember around that movie was when I first heard that, and we started engaging in that idea of like, does it always have to, when it's a drama about Black people, does it always have to be about suffering? I think was kind of what you said.
Right.
That's been something I've been really sensitive to since you brought it up.
Chiwetel Ejiofor for Will Smith is not.
Okay.
That's all. Like I'm more willing to accept if Chiwetel's like, man, I think I'm gonna make a slave of mine. All right, you're one of the better actors of our time. Yeah, I'll watch it. Will Smith, hey, get off. I don't know if I want to watch 2 hours of him being a slave. Anyway. Yeah, so we're back.
So this is the first movie that we're acknowledging him back.
Right? We're acknowledging him back, yeah. And there's a lot of weirdness surrounding the promotion of this movie. You have a Martin Lawrence whose health has kind of come into question, particularly the New Mexico run where Martin looked unusual. I'll say unusual. Could he have the pace, keep up with the action of a Bad Boys film? And I could tell you that he does, man. He really keeps up. He's funny. They take a big swing on this is a real commentary on them getting older, and they take a swing. And I don't know if it works all the way through, but what you get is some sense of in this world that Michael Bay created, some reflection on who they are as people, what they represent to each other. And so there's, without it spoiling much, there's a health scare. And one of the characters is kind of thrown into this like real self-reflection. And that becomes a through line of the movie. And it doesn't work. I got to tell you, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. But even with that not working, it's still fun. They still have incredible chemistry. One of the characters from the previous movies has an incredible scene that is like next level. Everybody's talking about it, and they'll talk about it even more when the weekend comes up.
I mean, should I beep this out? Is it a character that was thought to be gone and is back in this movie?
Oh no.
Not him. Okay.
No.
He's in the trailer, right? He's in the trailer, right, Ronald?
He is,
but I mean,
like
there was a character that supposedly died in one of the earlier movies.
It's not
that.
Okay.
But you get some, and then you get some redemption from some characters from the previous movie as well, like maybe some villains. So it just is a really cool movie, like especially if you're a big fan of the universe, Steve. So like,
I love that you're calling it a universe. I mean, it is a franchise, right? It's a franchise.
No,
it is a universe, but everything he's saying makes me feel like this. Saying Avengers Endgame. I'm reading people being like, this is where the series turned into Fast and the Furious.
Yes,
like, that kind of stuff is like,
John, something's about to happen. Like I could tell the way that they kind of introduced the team in the last one. That something's about to happen. Like,
okay, so they're turning it into a universe.
It is.
But I don't think 4 movies that are under the same banner are a universe. That's just a franchise. But if they're going to spin it off, then yes, then they're turning it into a universe, then that's a very 2020s thing to do. Is to say like we can turn this IP into the Bad Boys verse.
It's going to be one. You could smell the money as soon as they're like here are all these young, beautiful people. It's like, oh, okay. You just, The action shot really well. And really, honestly, it really deals with the abilities of people their age. Like, they aren't doing anything that I don't think I couldn't do, if I were, if I had infinite lives in a video game. You know what I mean? But like the action is pretty grounded, believe it or not. Like it's pretty good. The hand-to-hand combat's really cool. I don't know if you've seen like the making of course, I know you've seen this, Steve. The
Yeah, dude.
mounted gun,
It's amazing.
gun scene makes no sense. So that part makes sense, but there's a part where he throws the gun and the camera's still on the gun. I don't know how they do that. It's incredible. Like John Wick hasn't done this yet. And I know that because it looks so cool, John Wick's gonna do it, whatever next spin-off movie. But overall,
they're very like exciting filmmakers, which makes me hard to believe that Batgirl was as bad.
No,
right.
I was going to say, are these the Batgirl guys? These are the people who have a completely shelved movie. Like I saw some people pulling shots of action from this new Bad Boys film, saying, "I can't believe these people made a shelved Batgirl movie." You know, by all accounts, it's at least watchable. I mean, no one's saying it. No one seems to be as high on it as the people were who had seen what was it, Coyote versus Acme. But still, people were saying there's nothing like fundamentally broken about this movie that makes it worse than the shit that we see coming out. You know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I watched Bad Boys because I realized I'd never seen any of these movies.
Oh, cool.
When I wasn't going to see this movie the other night, I watched Bad Boys, and so I tried to watch all three, but I couldn't. I was pretending I was younger than I am. I was like, I'll watch a couple Bad Boys movies. No, I didn't. I got about 30 minutes into the second one, but I did think it was kind of fun the way the second one starts off with a very, very meta commentary, talking about them, the Will Smith of it all, the Martin Lawrence of it all. That opening scene where they're talking about therapy and all the stuff they've been through felt very much like riffing on Martin Lawrence's public persona, maybe Will Smith's too, but at the time it seemed more like Martin Lawrence was
definitely more Martin.
And now, you got Will Smith saying, "Somebody please put my name in your mouth." But I think there is I don't know. There's an interesting thing about where they are in their careers. And so I don't know these movies, so I don't think of it that way. But looking at like another movie that I saw the trailer for recently, which is Beverly Hills Cop 4, there's this thing of like, the sort of role that you can return to at a certain point in your career, no matter how old you get. And I think it's cool. I'm happy when actors have one of those. You know what I mean? So like Sylvester Stallone has Rocky or Rambo or whatever. Eddie Murphy has Axel Foley, whatever that's worth to anybody. It's still fun that he can come back and do it. And so, if these guys are coming in at this point, it means something different to see them now than it was in the first movie when they were like upstarts and like, up and coming stars.
Right.
They're like guys like Will Smith has had like, he's going for a comeback. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing when you can have a role like that is yours that you get to. And I guess was the last one a big success?
Yes.
I didn't really look. Okay, so that's why this movie exists, right? Is because the franchise has some life in it. Well, I mean, it's a little bit like that band that gets together with a new lineup 10 years after they break up, and then suddenly they start making more, because that was like there was a big break between Bad Boys 2 and Bad Boys for Life, and now there's only a few years between for Life and this one. So it's like, in a sense, they're back. But what you guys are saying about spinoff potential, is there talk? Is there actually, do we know they're planning on, like, is this,
not
sure. They talked about more? Because I heard people talking about this one like it's supposed to be the last one, but I guess they always do that.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a Calvin and Hobbes, a Hobbes and Shaw sort of deal with some of the characters.
I want to see Calvin and Hobbes spinoff from this.
Hobbes in this world. Yeah, just guns are blazing in Miami. But yeah, this franchise is really interesting, tonally all over the place. And Michael Bay really did kind of come to life in this. This is where the identity of Michael Bay kind of came to be, at least for people that knew him in the movie space. Like, this is the first big thing that he had, right? Michael Bay. I feel like this is because Will Smith makes it seem like this was the first movie that he ever directed. He'd never really heard of Michael Bay. He's like, this up and coming director Michael Bay wants to make this film that didn't have him in it. It was like a Belushi. It was a Belushi, and the original version of the script wasn't Will Smith and Martin. It was
wow.
It was like a whole different set.
Yeah, it's his first directorial effort.
Yeah, so Will Smith was kind of presented with this director, and
It feels like Baby Bay. It really does. Like watching it myself for the first time, it felt like, oh, this is not quite full on slick Bay yet. I mean, Bay's crazy. He's another one of those directors that's just crazy. He throws wacky shit into his movies. This movie is like the ultimate Bay shot of like, oh, you're moving across like a dance floor. Let's go under the legs of every woman dancing and look up her skirt if possible. You know, like every scene has got, but it's like this feels like that. You know, it's interesting. It's like early. It's like all these people were a little bit more upstart. In that zone. Sure, so it's like the stars and Michael Bay almost had something to prove with this movie.
You forgot to check your boarding pass, or he said something along the lines of that. Yeah. Just a fun movie, man.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I love this series or this franchise, as John calls it, and
series. It's a series as well.
I'm super excited to see it. Yeah, the third one I was very excited to see, and it like completely exceeded all expectations. So I'm hoping that I really enjoy this one. I think the standout honestly is like, I think you maybe mentioned it, Ronald, maybe in our text, but like just their chemistry together is like what makes these movies. Like, I do feel like the Michael Bay of it all, and the way these films look and are shot and the action kind of comes out is kind of like has its own like trademark to it, like it has a vibe. Like there's the 360 shot around, like that's in all of them, all the films. Like it's just, these are things that you expect. But I do think it was a very smart thing to, with Adil and Bilal, the two filmmakers, what they kind of showed in the third one, and what I'm excited to see with this one is just like, it's some version of that Bay look, it fits and settles right into the world that existed before, Bad Boys for Life came out 4 years ago, and this one can fit into it. It just seems nested very nicely, and the chemistry of the two is really kind of the through line of what makes these movies work. Because they're just electric together. They really are. I mean, I love them in these movies. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm glad you got to check it out. What else? I saw a bunch of stuff, guys. I want to just go down a list real quick. I'm not going to get too deep into any of it because one of them I think we'll maybe talk about later once maybe we all see it. But I thought Furiosa was great.
Yeah, I saw Furiosa.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I really, really, really enjoyed the performances and just like the world, and like I felt like the Furiosa element and like the performance from Anya Taylor-Joy, it just makes a lot of Charlize's stuff in Fury Road even better. I think when I think about the stuff I loved of her in that, or it gives different weight to a lot of that performance. Awesome action. Chris Hemsworth was great. Just really entertaining. Really enjoyed. I saw The Fall Guy finally. I liked that too, but definitely did not meet my expectations. Maybe it was oversold. Maybe I bought it a little too much into the buzz around it. I obviously Ryan Gosling, I love. Like I think he was incredible in it, and some awesome action in that as well. But maybe a little too long.
It was really long.
I think that's what I told you guys. It was like a little too long and like not as clean of a concept when it's getting into that
as I thought it was.
It's just more moving parts than it needs to be, when like the fundamental setup and the chemistry between the two leads really could have carried more of the movie, I thought.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally agree. Watched the Beach Boys doc on Disney Plus. I thought that was really good. And then the MoviePass MovieCrash doc on HBO Max.
I love that.
That was great. It was really good.
Really interesting, and like kind of not depressing is a hard word to use, but like sort of
it is, man.
It was one of those that like really whenever depressing. You see someone's creation or see someone who like knows what they're doing, or at least maybe has more respect for what they're trying to do. All these people are rich people trying to make more money, but like the idea of like what they were trying to do in the beginning and how that got, like when we were using it like crazy, saying, how is this not just running this company into the ground? Well, that's what we were doing. Is running. It's partially us that did it.
Yeah, it was a two-hander. It was us and the people that took over the company.
Right.
Yeah.
I really, really am just completely impressed and like so interested in Stacy Spikes. And I when
I was
he
impressed
bought
with
the
him too,
company
yeah.
back, when he
No, that's
bought
the
the company
coolest. That's the
back
coolest part. Yeah.
and did like the Kickstarter, like I remember backing that when he like kind of launched that. Like that's how kind of I got the beta into the relaunch of MoviePass a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like just being able to watch the content that he put on that Kickstarter page, like, you know, behind the scenes stuff, like I really was impressed and like just kind of inspired by him, like watching how kind of he walked away from what happened to him there and with dignity and, you know, with class, and reapproach something that he had that much confidence and faith in. And I don't know what's happening with it now is exciting. And I think the newer version of it is way more successful and it works really well.
Yeah.
But the documentary was really, yeah, you know, the kind of what happened with him and Hame, you know, like that whole thing about not being able to divest their shares for a year. And it was like,
Oh,
didn't get, and losing that was hard. I mean, I didn't know that detail. And that was just because mainly of my respect and appreciation for Stacy from the transparency I've had access to through that Kickstarter. I was like, now that really breaks my heart because I did not realize that. Like that was very, very upsetting to me when that hits in the doc. I thought that was really kind of just a horrible, horrible. God, of course that would happen. You know, it's just that's some crap. But yeah, that's a really interesting doc, and that again, that's a service that we were a part of a cultural thing.
No, I
And it
was
was
watching that with Nikki saying you
yeah.
the whole arc of what happened with MoviePass is
you can track it on this pod. Yeah.
we talked about it like so many different times. And then there was a brief
Yeah.
period where we were talking about it like every week we were basically saying, how did your card work for
What did you do?
know?
Yeah.
And then there was
What
that period. Then
what
there was
didn't
that
it work
period.
on?
Right. Well, then there was that weird, well, is it going to work? Yeah, it's working, but not here. It's working, but here's how. Oh, here's how you can do this. Here's how you can do that. Here's how you can get past this. Here's how you can use that. And then,
know,
oh, it's
man.
working. Oh my God, I can't believe this is working. And then, hey, it's not working anymore. And then, oh, I think I saw my last movie. And then it was back. And now I use it. I mean, I saw the movies I saw this week, I saw using MoviePass. I mean,
Same here. Yeah.
If you, especially if you wait a couple days, I'm actually kind of sad when I saw Furiosa, I noticed it had gone from high demand like to like 2 or 3 days later, like not high demand, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that kind of sucks for Furiosa, but at least it's only 15 points for me off my movie.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, yeah, I guess I would throw in, you know, we should talk about Furiosa once Ronald has
Ronald
seen
checks it out. Yeah.
because we did do the talk about our watch 'em alls. I don't know what we called them. I don't know if it was a watch 'em all, but we did do a watch 'em all episode of the Mad Max films, and then we have talked about Fury Road on the show. So I feel like whenever we've done a watch 'em all, it's our duty to do it a full throated segment on Furiosa. But yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think it's the movie that Fury Road is. It's not quite as like exacting with its like craft in a way, but I think it's really interesting to try to expand the Mad Max universe in a spin-off film like this that is sort of more epic and more, it's like we haven't had a Mad Max film that is this much of a direct sequel or a prequel as the case may be, but this is really linked to Fury Road in a way that no two other Mad Max movies are like so inextricably linked. And I think that's an interesting move, and I think it feels a little different. But the world, you're right, Steve, like the look and the feel and the inventiveness of this world, we talked about it when we covered Mad Max. It's like George Miller and his collaborators kind of invented that look and feel, or at least they were the first main exposure people had to that like view of the apocalypse. And so seeing him dig into it now with all the imagination that the guy has, and like some of these scenes, there's like 2 action scenes in this film. There's the one kind of attack on the tanker as it's moving, and then there's the when they're taking Jack and Furiosa are attacking Bullet Town. These scenes are just insane action sequences.
Incredible,
and they're so beautifully shot and so like I don't know. It's what you get what you want from it. Yeah. There's things to talk about. Like it may feel a little long at 2.5 hours. But it's got some really interesting things in it, and it kind of has almost like chapters or movements in it where you get like it really is more of an epic than the other stories in terms of like spanning time and dealing with like different groups stuff. So yeah, I can't wait to see what you think of it, Ronald. And I definitely think this is worthy of like the home theater viewing, it's gonna be amazing on your setup. But I saw also a film we've talked about on the show called which I think we may have mentioned it on the show, but In a Violent Nature.
Oh,
yeah, you
you
mentioned
saw
that
it?
you were gonna go see it last week.
Yeah. And I think it's like for what it's doing, it's if you like the trailer and you've heard about it and you think it sounds interesting, I think people need to see this. It's like fans of slashers need to see this, but it is also very much a slow cinema kind of approach of like really following a like the concept is the thing that makes it work, but it's also the thing that might try your patience by the end, depending on what your feeling is towards this kind of experiment. But the fact that you're sort of following the killer and that moments will play out over such a long period of time that you kind of it's almost like a thing the movie does. And if you look at other examples of slow cinema, the filmmakers say they were influenced by Terrence Malick, as just one name to throw out there. But just the idea of slow paced scenes that are sort of artfully shot and sort of play it, just like I said, you see the whole scene play out and you are following the killer. So that's a unique thing that, like, as a podcast that talks about as many slasher films as we do, it's interesting to see someone try such a different thing in the genre and yet hit the little if you were looking for like what are the requirements of a slasher film, it kind of hits them in a very different kind of way. So I enjoyed that, and I do think it's cool. It creates its own little mythology. There's some things that just kind of bumped me, and I think one of the main things is that the people in it, it's not really a knock on the acting or the writing, but it's kind of both in a way that, like, the one thing this movie doesn't improve on is the sort of like hack characters in a slasher film. Like, these characters feel like the kind of slasher characters that you see, the kind of annoying, sort of thin characters that get set up just to die. And I feel like this movie could have been that little slice more inventive and almost realistic by having more naturalistic characterizations and less like, to me, the characters were kind of abrasive. That might be part of the humor because you're sort of seeing bad things happen to these people. And there are at least a couple of kills that feel like they're playing off of a kind of, don't you hate this person? And then you're watching them die horribly. That's a little bit of a thing, but it's not enough of a thing to really be like that's the tone of this movie. But yeah, it's an experiment, and like I said, I think it kind of needs to be seen. It's got some interesting things about it. Like no score and very, very immersive sound design, and it does do this very almost a campy approach towards the sort of killer it's trying to create, but then of an extremely naturalistic way of following this character around. So, I mean, if you see the trailer is kind of the movie. It's just, imagine that trailer with like longer scenes of him walking through the forest and longer, more gory kills than are suggested in the trailer. But there's a reason why this movie's getting buzz. This feels like the ultimate kind of slasher film that would be a festival film and would get noticed that way. I just don't want to see anybody saying this movie like reinvigorates slashers or it's the best slasher in 30 years or anything, because it's like it does that by not playing. You know what I mean? It does that thing you can do with an experimental film, which is like, hey, what if we don't do the thing? That doesn't make it the best example of the thing. But I'm really glad I saw it, and I guess I'm glad I saw it on the big screen too, because I do think the sound design was effective in terms of how naturalistic and immersive it is. And also a movie that kind of wins me over right at the end. It does some kind of artful stuff that kind of won me back over. But right before the end, there's a long monologue from a character who I was just not that interested in. And I didn't think the acting was that great. And I think that's a real risk to put like a 5 or 6 minute monologue in the mouth of a character close to the end of a movie. So yeah, I'm recommending it. I hope that's clear. But yeah, it's not without flaws. It's not like the greatest slasher in 30 years or anything like that, as I've seen some people saying. And I don't know, what else did I watch? I guess that's it. I guess I was going to mention the MoviePass doc, and like I said, Furiosa. Those were both movies I was glad I saw out in the theater.
Anything else you see, Ronald, besides Bad Boys?
That's a good question. Let me think. I'm looking at my movies. No. Oh, yes. I saw that feeling that the time for doing something is past. The Joan Arno movie. That's just like, it is I really enjoyed it, but it is. But the dating scene is rough, man. It makes you realize, like, God damn it, like it's gotten stranger because you have more access to people, right? Like you could if you wanted to go out on a date every day of the week if you wanted to. Sometimes two times, three times on a Saturday, but that accessibility of people doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the connections. And this is about a woman that has like a very complicated sexual relationship with an older man, and he seems very like nonchalant about their dynamic. So she decides she wants to go out in the world and meet people, and she does. And she's trying to find her person, somebody she can connect with on a basic level, just like, do you like musicals like I like musicals? That kind of stuff. And it gets very complicated. I'll put it like that, because she wants the dynamic that she had with the older man with other people. So she likes to be dominated. She likes to be uh, choked and stuff like that. And that's all kind of put in this framing of the dating world. But I think it's kind of a metaphor for, you know, how you connect to people and, what it is that you seek out in relationships. So it's kind of used through this dynamic that she likes in relationship, this kind of 50 Shades of Grey sort of dynamic that she has with her partners, which represents maybe something bigger in what she wants out of people. It's really well done. It's the characters are just really unique. I haven't seen really any of these actors before, but besides Michael Cero Creighton, this kind of comedic actor, wears glasses. Um, High voice. He sounds like this. Very high voice, really funny guy. But I hadn't seen any of the other actors. I think these are like local New York actors that are trying to find their way, working actors. It's just a really interesting movie that I don't know would have been made 10 years ago. It wouldn't have been as liberated as this is. This feels very like the voice in this feels very like almost like an evolved version of like Girls, like the way Girls felt, but like even more free. I don't know. I don't even know how I can describe that, but yeah, it's worth checking out. I wouldn't watch it around any kids because there's so much sex in it. And then the last movie I wanted to talk about is Ross Glass's Love Lies Bleeding. Whew! Starring Kate O'Brien and Kristen Stewart. Also Ed Harris and Dave Franco are in it. This is a tale of love and deceit and violence and drugs and lots of guns. So many guns. But Katie O'Brien, who you may have seen as one of the characters in Ant-Man, Quantumania, she really stand out, has a very unique look. She's huge in this movie. She's a aspiring weightlifter that comes to a gym that Kristen Stewart is managing, and they kind of fall for each other. But Katie O'Brien's character, Jackie, needs work. She's homeless at the time where they meet. She gets into it with a shady character, and chaos ensues. That's all I'm going to say. But it's shot really well. This is like my drive of 2024. It's shot really well. It's beautiful. The empowerment and seeing Katie O'Brien dominate. She's like a very muscular woman just beating the living shit out of Ben in this movie. It's so fun to see. And you know that it can happen. I've seen women beat dudes up before. This isn't like an impossible thing. It's so cool. This dynamic between Kristen Stewart and Katie. I mean, it's kind of their attraction's kind of jumping off the screen. And I like Kristen Stewart in these roles where she's being challenged in some ways, but then in some ways, like she's in a more comfortable place portraying somebody in a queer space. You know, I really like that. It's a cool movie, well shot. It's very neon, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Just very like dirty in the places where it's dirty, and then
well,
when
it
the light,
looks like a neo noir. When you mentioned Drive, that seems like a good. I mean, from my impression of it, it
yeah,
looks like one of those kind of neo noir, kind of
yeah,
sweaty, shadowy. Like a little bit of a like a genre exercise that
yeah,
also kind of fits into
yeah,
like a thriller. Like it's one of those where every time someone describes it, they make it sound like a different kind of movie
yeah,
because they don't
yeah,
quite know
for
what
sure.
category to put it in. So yeah, I can't believe I haven't watched that one yet.
You
I'm
guys need to see
dying to see
it.
it. Yeah.
When you see Ed Harris, man, he's just like this like presence. He's so filthy. He's just such a filthy dude, man. And he, whenever he comes on screen, there's like this dread, and it follows
Dread
him
Harris is
every
what they call it.
dread Harris.
Red hairs.
Dread Harris that'll punch you in the chest to revive you. Just damn you, bitch. God damn it. Yeah, but really really crazy movie that should be seen. It needs to be seen. And I cannot believe more people aren't talking about this movie. Um, Katie O'Brien's a star, man. She is a star, and I can't wait to see her in more stuff. She needs to be like in another MCU movie, not Ant-Man Quantumania.
Well, she's in Twisters this summer,
Oh, she is?
and
Okay.
she's also where else is she in? She's in
I'm ready. Bring it on.
she's in the next Mission Impossible.
Oh, is she gonna be a villain?
I have no idea, but I know they announced that like
Oh.
when Love Lies Bleeding was out, like that was a part of the PR run for it.
So have you got either of you guys seen it yet?
I haven't watched it yet. No,
Okay.
it's in the queue. I'm ready. I'm ready to watch it, but yeah, I just haven't. I think one night I actually started it and just completely got sidetracked and didn't get to
Yeah.
watch it.
Okay.
But the comparison to Drive sounds good to me, so that helps.
Yeah. It's a nasty movie, man. People are nasty to each other, but it's such a fun ride. It's such a fun ride. Such a fun ride. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think that's an episode. I thought there was another one I was going to mention, and now it's completely. I've been trying to remember what it was. Oh, it's like I got it. I finally finished Civil War.
I haven't seen it yet. What'd you think?
Well, maybe we can talk about it more
Okay.
once you guys check it out, since it's on VOD now. I thought the movie was great. I thought it was great. Like it's incredibly hard to watch. It's triggering. It's way too. It feels way too of the fabric that our country is kind of going through right now. But great performances and killer ending, and just the last like 20 minutes or so of it, I was just completely like, this is like the thrill, the suspense is like, it just crescendos so crazy. But yeah, Kristen Dunst, Kaylee Spaney, like everybody, Wagner Morrow, everybody that's in this, what I thought was great. I'm really glad I got to finish it, because like I was like, I don't know when I'm going to watch this, because Aaron wants nothing to do with this movie. Because it is challenging, man. Like some of the violence.
It looks like it.
God, and Jesse Plemons, man, he's in it for like 5 minutes, but my guy just completely wow. Like he's got that quick shot in the trailer where he has the line where they're like, "We're Americans," and he says like, "Well, what kind of American are you?" And I was just like, "Fuck, that's
I heard that in the movie he goes on to say like Central America, South America, which to me weakens that line. Is chilling because it sounds like he means what kind of American are. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, which is like, I'm not saying it's not scary, and I haven't seen the movie. But when I heard that the context of the line was a little different, it was like, oh, but because in the trailer, that was the line that made. I mean, it sold the idea that this movie might be triggering to me, because this question of like the two Americas that we're living in North America right now. I thought was what that line was referring to, more so than like immigrants or whatever.
It's layered though. I mean, because like
no, that's what I was saying. I having not seen the movie, I'm sure that the movie's trying to do a lot of things at once without pointing to any one particular political situation, because it's not trying to be like topical in the sense that, next year it'll feel out of date. Like the impression I got was that the movie creates its own kind of scenario that is similar to ours, but it's not a 1-to-1 ratio of like what's happening in America today, right? Like it's just you can apply it though.
Absolutely, like you can find the connective tissue, and I feel like that scene specifically really stands out. And I get what you're saying about the kind of feeling of it on the trailer. And I think that feeling you have, it still exists in that scene because you have characters that are of geographic areas in America, in the United States. And there are characters that are American, but they have, heritage from other countries. Right. And it's like, there's a bit of a nuance to like how he's evaluating them when they answer his questions based simply on, I'm an American, but I'm from, or my family's from whatever. Like it's just so nasty. And like, it's just such a scary, uncomfortable scene. And like, I don't know, just to say he comes in and just completely, he's an MVP, man. Like he's in so many he has that moment in so many movies. He does. Like again, one of the best of the pod in Game Night. He's got his scenes in Game Night. He's incredible.
His part of Killers of the Flower Moon is like my favorite part of that.
I haven't seen it.
But I believe you. Another trailer line that people quoted. Honestly, people quoted his trailer line from the Civil War trailer, but also like the line in the Killers of the Flower Moon trailer where he says, "I'm here to check on these murders, find out who's doing them." Like, but that in the movie it's the similar vibe. Like he brings such a little shot of almost like wry humor to that really dark subject matter. I think he's one of those amazing people.
I'd be curious to talk to you guys about it more when you can check it out. But I thought it was pretty impressive, man.
No, you've just reminded me that I can watch it. I think I've had the moment of just buckling in, and I just haven't done it yet. Of like, okay, I'm ready to watch this kind of upsetting movie because I'm sure it's entertaining enough to be like everyone. It's right.
It's propulsive. Like they're going across this area of the country to get to a spot, and it's like these episodic like stops, and like what happens at that stop is a different flavor of what's happening in this version of America, of how deeply entrenched is this area, and this area that they drive through, basically this idyllic town that still seems quote unquote normal because like they just don't want to get involved with what's going on. It's like, do you guys know that there's like a war happening now? Oh yeah, we know. We're just not. We don't want to get involved with that, and they just continue living their life like nothing is happening. But like that kind of spectrum of like what you could possibly encounter in that version of this country is like it's entertaining, but also very scary and uncomfortable to watch. But I really liked it though. It's a very, very interesting movie. That was the last one I wanted to mention.
All right. Well, I want to mention one thing that's not a movie, but I just want to throw out a plug. I have just started a podcast about the Coen brothers called COINTELPRO, COENTELPRO. You can find that. I think if you look up COINTELPRO, even spelled the way I'm doing it, on any podcast app, you'll see a lot of COINTEL shows. But just keep searching. Maybe say COINTELPRO Coen Brothers. You'll find it. I know it's on Spotify podcasts and it's on Apple Podcasts. But I'm doing like every episode devoted to a particular Coen Brothers film. And at the time this episode is out, either coming very soon or having come out right at the same time, is an episode with Ronald talking about Raising Arizona with me.
Oh man,
which was fun. A film that we talked about because both of our late fathers were huge Raising Arizona fans. And so Ronald and I did some of our sappy dad bonding over the movie Raising Arizona. So that's, like I said, it's either out right now or it's coming very soon. But either way, you can find that podcast feed, COINTELPRO, a podcast about the Coen brothers, because the first episode about Blood Simple is already out. And that one has a conversation with Mike White from the podcast The Projection Booth, which is a great movie podcast as well. So look for that and enjoy. And Steve, we've talked about, I'm trying not to spoil, we've talked about a possible appearance from Steve on that show as well. But we'll just have to find out how that works out, where he shows up.
This pod can be found at moviesreview.com, and you can go to past episodes there. You can jump into the platform of your choice if you haven't subscribed yet, or if you maybe want to go there and just link up and leave a review or a rating, you can do that. with a link right from that page as well. YouTube.com/movie podcast. If you want the video element of this show, you can go there and hit subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications of when the new videos come out, guys. Come on, it's every weekend, basically. So it's very
almost
easy.
Every weekend.
Almost.
We called an audible last week because
it averages out to every weekend, guys. We're gonna round up, okay?
I like rounding.
I gotta round up, John. You know what I mean? Give us the benefit of the doubt here. Round up. Thank you so much for listening. We're back next week with another episode, and as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.